Yeah.
Thank you, Swati, and welcome to the first DMS Technical Assistance call of 2022. It's a very chilly day here in Washington. I don't think we've gotten above freezing, or maybe just a degree or two. We hope that your year is getting off to a good start, and we're looking forward to engaging further with all of you, but particularly with our cohort 1 states during the coming months. I want to acknowledge the great work that's already begun with those states as we've started the protocol interviews with them that are going very well. We want to thank states for how quickly they have prepared and engaged with the DMS process. For today's call, we're going to do several things. First, we will provide some DMS updates. Then we'll move into reviewing our protocol structure and then delve more deeply into the data protocol. You remember that data is one of the critical pieces of the general supervision puzzle. But before we get started with the main part of our presentation, I want to give our OSEP deputy, David Cantrell, an opportunity to say a few words. David?
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's been a while since I've spoken at these monthly TA calls, but I wanted to echo Greg's comments that we here in OSEP are very much appreciative of your leadership and your support of infants and toddlers, children and youth with disabilities throughout this school year. It is January, we're midway through yet another challenging year, but I'm really excited at this time where we are. We are kicking off the DMS 2.0 monitoring process, and I think you agree that we've been very responsive to your suggestions. And beginning, it was a year ago, I believe, we decided to pivot the DMS rollout, which gave us additional time to collaborate with each of you, particularly in the cohort 1 group, but also the all of our grantee, all of our state directors, just to make sure that you understood what does the DMS 2.0 process look like, what to expect the year in which you're identified to be in a cohort. And the comments I've heard from our staff have just been positive regarding our kickoff calls. But you know, it's not done yet, right? So I certainly want to request that all of you in cohort 1, those of you who are gearing up in cohort 2, if you have any suggestions for improvement, any feedback regarding our technical assistance provided to you for the DMS process, or even, you know, accolades, we'd really like to hear that as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Matt Schneer and Kate Moran, the leads for the DMS 2.0 rollout, plus all of the OSEP staff engaged in this rollout. I'm particularly proud of the work that we've done in OSEP. When I think about where we were a year and a half, 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, I think we've certainly come a long way. And it has taken a collaborative effort of all of the OSEP family. And I'm grateful for their leadership. And so with that, I will turn it over to Kate Moran, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, David. We are very excited with the work that has begun, and to reiterate what we'll be walking through on today's call, we'll be providing a couple of updates on information that we've posted and some clarifications on parts of our process. We're going to do a brief overview of the protocol structure and review, and then we're going to really dive into the data protocol, talk about the framework, the definition, and some overarching questions, and finish out with talking through historical findings that we have made around the area of data to provide some space for you as states, as you're preparing for these visits, to be thinking about your own system. So next slide, please, Swati. These are some updated documents that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention. They are posted on our IDEA website under the DMS area in resources for grantees. But this, there are two documents I want to highlight for you all today. The overview of the differentiated monitoring and support system. So if you haven't been able to sit in on some of our previous calls, it's a really good one-pager that provides you an overview of what this DMS process is. And then in addition to that, we have posted our document review and request template. So one of the ways that we've communicated which documents and pieces of evidence we might be requesting related to a protocol, we've posted that on each of the individual protocols. However, we've pulled that together into one document that you as a state could download and begin to populate for your own purposes so that you're clear on what you have in place, if there are any gaps, or be prepared to provide links to where those items are either posted on your website or at least have those begin to kind of gather that into a folder that you would easily be able to virtually submit to MSEP. So we wanted to highlight those today in response to requests from states to help make this an even more user-friendly process for you. So next slide, please. So another update, we've had some questions about stakeholder involvement, what that might look like. We're still finalizing some of our internal processes, but we wanted to talk through what the purpose of that is, some of the groups we may be reaching out to, and some activities around that. So the primary purpose, again, of that stakeholder input process is really to gain input on how your stakeholders are experiencing your general supervision oversight of within your state. So for the lead agencies and the SEAs, how is that playing out in your state, in your general supervision responsibilities? How are they experiencing it? So we may talk to some local LEAs, we may talk to district representatives, we may talk to EIS providers and some small focus groups. We may in those conversations have some specific focus areas that we may ask them questions around, but we would be collaborating with you, the state, as we organize that piece of it. Most likely we see that part happening virtually, just so that we would be able to engage a broader base from your state to participate virtually, as opposed to just being in one centralized location. The other piece that we do want to reiterate, and I said this kind of at the beginning, but the focus is really about the state system-wide issues rather than child-specific issues. So we don't want to delve into those child-specific issues that we know you all as SEAs and lead agencies are managing and handling. We would be looking more from a statewide perspective and how that interacts with your stakeholder groups. Some of the stakeholder, in addition to the local component, we would also have some engagement with the state protection and advocacy systems, your SAPs and ICCs, parent training and information centers, and then again, those focus groups of parents and children, infants, toddlers, youth, and children with disabilities. Next slide, please. All right, so diving into what we're talking about today, on last month's call, we reviewed the integrated monitoring protocol. We talked about the sustaining compliance and improvement protocol. So if you missed those, that call, that is posted on the website. Swati has put the link of where these trainings are posted so you can watch that recording. And then today we're going to be talking about the data and SPP protocol. So again, all of these fall under that general supervision puzzle that I'm going to talk about on the next slide. But the trainings that we did last month and then going into February and March will follow a similar process where we talk about the protocol generally, and then we're going to dive into some previous findings that were made in that area. So today we'll be talking about data. The next 2 months, we're going to dive into the dispute resolution protocols. Next slide, please. All right, so these are the 8 key components that we feel when put together establish a solid general supervision system. Again, today we have pulled out this data puzzle piece that we're going to be diving into a little bit deeper. And SPP APR is still connected to the puzzle because we most likely will be diving deeper into specific indicators during phase 2, but that will be individualized based on state performance and focus areas. So next slide, please. All right, brief overview of the protocol structure. We've talked about this on a couple of monthly calls. Again, if you've missed any of those calls over the last couple of months, they're posted online. Highly recommend going back because we did spend a lot of time doing overviews of the whole structure. But just to reiterate, the protocols are organized in a specific way to hopefully make them usable and user-friendly to you, our states. They have a overarching question. That question has a regulation linked to it. We included both the Part B and the Part C regulations, and that is followed by general information that basically explains what that regulation is getting at, what we would expect to see in place in a state, and what we'll be following up in the subsequent questions about. So those possible follow-up questions will just dive deeper into the topic area that the overarching question is covering. And then that section is followed by areas or issues for follow-up. So within that, there may be some things that on their face might be non-compliance. There's other things that we're probably just going to spend some time talking about a little bit more to make sure that we understand exactly what's happening. Some of the issues or areas of concern that are listed within that may be technical assistance that we would be working on. So there's a variety of things that pop up through that areas or issues for follow-up, and that's why we've named it exactly what it is. They're simply areas or issues that we MSIP will be following up on. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the documents that is in that general resources page on our web page on IDEA, Swati just posted the link directly to this document. This is our framework. And so for each puzzle piece, we have a if-then outcome chart similar to this. What it is outlining is if the state has something in place, then it's going to lead to these ultimate outcomes. So for data, if a state has an effective system to collect and report timely and accurate data, then they will have valid and reliable that is timely submitted. They would be able to analyze that data for strategic planning and equitable allocation of resources. In addition to using that data to support implementation strategies and that closely align to improved outcomes. All of that leading to this intended outcome, which is an effective system to collect and report timely and accurate data, will contribute to improved outcomes for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities and their families. So within this, we're going to talk about the definition. I just want to highlight here these examples of evidence. These are a little bit more expanded than our document request. So this is also a place to look through and kind of read through the different examples that are provided here. It may be a little bit more specific. Like you can see on here, it says models for root cause analysis, evidence of how that's occurring. Again, on our document request, those are more pieces that we would want to see. These may be some things that are nice to haves or otherwise. So just highlighting that there so you can kind of look through that. So next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Coco Austin, to take it on from there. But I think I probably just got, I think you may have changed when you got married, or did you keep Austin?
It's still Austin.
It's still Austin. Okay,
Yeah.
I should know that. Sorry. All right, take it away, Coco. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. So as Kate mentioned, we saw in the prior slide, we saw the framework of a state's data system. So what is a data system? In this slide, we show a definition. A data system is designed to ensure data collected are valid and reliable, and that the information collected is reported to the department as well as the public in a timely manner. The data system will also inform states' improvement activities as well as verify data collected and reported reflects the actual practice and performance within the state. Next slide, please. So how will OSEP look at the data systems? This slide is taken from the actual protocol. It shows some documents and information that OSEP already has. So we're not looking for states to submit this information. It's just to show you some of the things that we are looking at. Next slide, please. OSEP will also look at what we call publicly available information. Again, these are not items that states will submit. This just gives you the idea of all of the things that we look at. Next slide. So now in this slide, you'll see an example of documents to submit to OSEP for review. Now, you may not have items that are identical to this list, but just keep in mind any items that you feel are useful to OSEP, such as training manuals, data collection calendars, samples of documents, things like that, we welcome them for submission. Next slide. So these are the three overarching questions on the protocol itself. It is most important for OSEP to understand the state's ability to collect valid and reliable data, as well as timely and accurate data. OSEP should be able to gain a clear picture of how states assess the trends across LEAs, as well as use the data to address the specific needs of all of its LEAs. Next, I'll have my colleague Kim continue the presentation with a look at reminders and helpful hints. Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. When calculating and reporting your FFY 2020 data in the SPP or APR, the state must ensure data only reflects the LEA's or the EIS program's actual level of compliance prior to the opportunity to correct non-compliance. Pre-finding corrections is when the state reported less than 100% compliance, actually for the target data for the previous reporting period, and the data for the FF 2019, and the state did not identify any findings of non-compliance and provide an explanation of why the state did not identify any non-compliance. I didn't say this at the beginning, but these were actual findings that we have made on monitoring visits. So, well, if that is your response is that we didn't identify non-compliance because we gave the district or the program, we afforded them the opportunity to correct prior to actually making a finding, then the APR data should not have been 100%. Just a reminder, again, as Kate mentioned, we've had several TA calls and national calls where this is just a reminders and repeated information. This is not new. The compliance data report in APR should be the data that was actually reflected in performance. So if a district's data was 75% upon the first pull of data, and then you allowed for pre-finding correction, then that is a percentage that's reported in the APR. And we actually have a scenario that helps to lay out an issue that could have possibly happened. So a state does a data pool and the district has not entered the annual IFSP date for the student. And therefore, at first look, it looks like it could be non-compliance. Now, after confirmed with the LEA, the IEP meeting has been held. Although late, the date was also subsequently entered. The SEA pulled and reviewed data to ensure that the finding did not have to be made, and then it was closed. So we consider a pre-finding correction. So the state actually, or the district, verified that prong one, that the specific child non-compliance had been corrected. And then moving on to prong two, reviewed updated data to ensure to ensure systemic compliance. Thus, the data reported to the APR should again not be 100%. It should be less than 100% since the meeting was not held timely. Next slide, please. Moving on to some other examples of findings that we've made. We've made findings on the wrong year of data used, sample size, and timelines of notification. Specifically, the actual language that was used in a finding is the state used the wrong year for making findings. For example, in response to actions required for the FFY 2018 APR, the state reported that the program has issued written findings of noncompliance. And based on the 2019 data in January of 2021, and will report the correction of those findings in 2020 APR due in February 22. So OSEP notes the state referenced the 2019 data instead of referencing 2018 data in its narrative. So with that, we just want to provide a reminder to ensure that not only should you reflect the correct year when you're reviewing data, but you should also make sure that your narrative lined up and indicates the correct year of data. And the third being the sample side. The language read, the size of data based on the sample state used for making or verifying correction does not meet the reasonableness standard. Now, while OSEP doesn't define the reasonableness standard, we do expect the state should be able to justify the sample size that they choose to verify or correct data. Regarding the timelines of notifications, states must provide written notification of findings of noncompliance as soon as possible after the state concludes that an LEA or EIS provider has noncompliance, which OSEP expects to be generally in less than 3 months. From the time the SEA or LEA discovers the noncompliance, again, this is not new information. This is outlined in the 0902 memo and was highlighted in last month's TA call. Next slide. The state identified several barriers to its data collection system. One issue was the difficulty of getting district staff to adhere to data submission timelines. Although the state could determine which districts were habitually late at submitting data, it did not appear to have an enforcement tool to ensure timely submissions. So what we are saying here is that the finding that was made was based on a review of documents, analysis of data, interviews with the state personnel, OSEP determined that the states had procedures and practices that are reasonably designed to collect and report valid and reliable data and information to the department and the public in a timely manner. However, except it has not been able to report complete and accurate data due to the late submission from districts and EIS providers. So what that says is that the state was able to report to us and the public timely. However, it's incomplete data. If your district's not supporting to you timely, then your data was not correctly submitted. So additionally, OSEP concluded that the state did not have the policies and procedures in place to ensure that the district staff was able to verify and submit data timely. And then the state had no tools for enforcement actions when the districts did not submit timely. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Matt, do you want to jump in and just say a few words as I check through to see if we have any questions clarifying some of those findings that we've made previously? I'm sure there will be some questions. Again, I do want to just clarify one thing. The previous calls that we've had have not been on these particular findings, but some of this information is covered under memo 0902. But we just want to dive in and make sure that these are clear to folks on the line as you're typing questions.
Well, feel free. Thanks, Kate, and thanks to Kim and to Coco for presenting. So we just want to make sure that you are everybody understands the findings, and please feel free to follow up if you have additional questions. I think the one that is the one that causes most questions has been one that we've addressed, that's been addressed in some of the APR calls previously, and this is about how you report on your indicator data. So in the situation that Kim described, if your initial look at the data for, let's say, Part B, indicator 13, secondary transition, shows that the compliance level of your LEAs was at 70 whatever %, and then you allow those LEAs to go in and correct and do the additional provide the additional information. When you report the data in the APR, the APR data should reflect that original poll, so the 70%. At the same time, you can do pre-finding correction in that you don't have to issue a written finding for those LEAs as long as you follow 0902. So that's an issue we've discussed before, and we just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. It is something we've identified both through monitoring and through review of APRs previously. Anything else, Kate, that you think we need to focus on?
No, I don't think so. This is kind of a complicated one. So if any of those states in cohort 1 want to talk through it a little bit more with your monitoring teams, definitely suggest that. If you have any question, if you do utilize pre-finding correction, if that's something that is part of your monitoring process, just ensuring that that data you're submitting in the APR is not the data after you have allowed for that correction to occur. So are there any questions? I don't think we have any hands raised. I haven't seen any questions in the chat today. So we must have been crystal clear on our points that we're making.
Well, hopefully you have found this information helpful. We're going to continue with this process of going through our protocols. In our next month's call, we will be delving into the realm of dispute resolution and doing something similar for that. As Kate said, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to your state lead or to your monitoring team or to Kate and I. We appreciate all the cooperation we're getting, and what I've been saying to my team is that I'm very excited to actually be starting the monitoring and not just talking about it. I don't know if the states involved agree with that sentiment, but that's where we're coming from. So thank you again. We appreciate your attention, and we'll give you some extra time in your days back. Bye-bye.
We did have 2 comments and 1 question. When will this meeting be posted? Typically, Swati is able to post it within the week, or at least by that following Monday or Tuesday. In addition, there was a comment that most folks are in the SPP APR brain right now, which we recognize. So that's probably why there haven't been too many questions today. Stella Brown has her hand raised. I'm not sure if that was an accidental raise or if you do have a question.
I just allowed Stella to talk.
Great.
So I'm asking to unmute. Could have been an accident. Accident.
Yep, that's what I figured.
Right.
So far, we haven't had too many. That's okay. I think it's happened each month that somebody accidentally hits that hand raise. Perfectly fine. But on that note, then we'll go ahead and close for today, and we'll talk to you guys again next month. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.